Welcome to the case scenario, LGBTQ plus gender-based violence. From the video, we are in step 4, Chief Judge addresses the courtroom, welcomes everyone, introduces themselves and the other judges, and asks the prosecutor to introduce themselves and their team including the victim or survivor, who will be seated in the left-hand side. After that will be step 5, the defense lawyer to introduce themselves and their team, who will be seated on the right-hand side. After the defense lawyer introduces herself and the team including the defendant or perpetrator, the chief judge acknowledges the introductions and grants the prosecutor permission to make their statement to the court. The prosecutor will now deliver a statement to the court. Please note that the two prosecutors will share the 8-minute time limit equally, each delivering half of the statement. Apologies for the inconvenience, this part of the audio is missing.
By alcohol and amphetamines, where upon hearing Ms. Anurag's voice, emerged from a cubicle and began hurling transphobic slurs, including, "You don't belong here, freak." Prosecution would like to address that under Article 118 of the Public Freedoms Act, persons have a right to use the bathroom, despite what gender they may identify with. When Ms. Anurag asserted her right to use the bathroom, this song became physically violent, grabbing Ms. Anurag's hair, punching her, throwing her into a glass mirror. The impact shattered the mirror, embedding a sharp blast in Ms. Anurag's right eye, to which Ms. Thorne then kicked Ms. Anurag repeatedly as she lay injured and unconscious on the floor while fleeing the scene. Emergency services later found Ms. Anurag unconscious. She suffered significant injuries, including the loss of vision in her right eye and two fractured ribs. Injuries that have permanently affected her physical and emotional well-being. The defendant has been found guilty under Article 213, subsection 2 of the Mandara Criminal Code, causing serious injury or harm in aggravating circumstances. The aggravation stems from the defendant's motivation, a hatred towards the victim's gender identity, aligning with the definition provided in the statute. The offence carries a maximum penalty of 20 years imprisonment, reflecting the hardened severity of hate-motivated crimes. However, Your Honours, it would be remiss to not mention some mitigating circumstances that deserve the court's attention. The prosecution acknowledges that the defendant endured a traumatic upbringing throughout her life. She was brought up in an abusive orphanage that normalised violence and instilled harmful transphobic ideologies. This environment undoubtedly shaped her beliefs and behaviour, contributing to her actions on the night of the offence. Furthermore, the defendant was born with fetal alcohol syndrome, a condition that affects impulse control, emotional regulation, and decision making. At the time of the offence, the defendant was also heavily intoxicated by alcohol and methamphetamine, of which she has had a long-standing addiction and has been a significant driver of her behaviour.
Your Honours, although these factors are important for the court to consider, they do not negate Ms. Swan's heinous acts that evening, and they certainly do not undo the devastating harm done to Ms. Anurag. The defendant's actions were rooted in hatred and prejudice against the gender identity. The transphobic slurs yelled at the victim during the attack, combined with the defendant's hostile behaviour, leave no doubt that this assault was motivated by a deep-seated intolerance towards Ms. Anurag as a transgender woman. The injuries sustained by Ms. Anurag were not only severe, but life-altering. The loss of vision in her right eye has permanently impacted her daily life and professional prospects, while the physical scars and fractured ribs are compounded by the emotional trauma of being violently attacked for her identity. Anurag was alone in a space where she had every right to feel safe, but instead the defendant exploited this isolation, targeting a marginalised individual in a moment of vulnerability. This deliberate targeting of a marginalised transgender woman heightens the severity of this offence. The defendant's record includes a previous assault on a queer student during youth and a series of violent and drug-related offences in childhood. This pattern of behaviour demonstrates an ongoing disregard of the law and a predisposition towards violent action. Even during police questioning, the defendant refused to cooperate, showing no remorse for harm caused. After committing the assault, the defendant fled the scene, leaving the victim unconscious and severely injured. Your Honour, the prosecution submits that the aggravating factors in this case far outweigh the mitigating circumstances. The defendant's actions were hate motivated, targeted, and inflicted permanent harm on the victim. Under Article 420 of the Mandara Criminal Code, the court may order a custodial sentence, including a maximum prison sentence. We note to Your Honours that the Mandara Criminal Code states that a custodial sentence should only be considered as a last resort option. The prosecution submits that Kami's inability to control her impulses requires a custodial sentence for the safety of the community and also for the well-being of the survivor, Ms. Anorak. Ms. Anorak continues to struggle with intense flashbacks of the event, in addition to the physical harm she suffers, having lost vision in her right eye. To allow the defendant's action to be met with sympathy would only send a message to society that hate crime is not the fault of the individual, but the fault of their harm. This conclusion could not be more far from the truth. Ms. Swan has been provided with chance after chance to amend her views, but has actively chosen not to. She chose to consume alcohol and methamphetamine that night, the same way she chose to permanently change Anorak's life. Ms. Swan's upbringing has no doubt been unfortunate. However, Your Honours must not use this fact to mitigate the permanent damage Ms. Anorak will have to endure for the remainder of her life. To reflect the seriousness of this crime and to deter similar offences, I respectfully recommend a custodial sentence of 5 years imprisonment. This sentence serves not only to deliver justice to the victim, but to affirm society's commitment to equality, dignity, and the protection of vulnerable communities.
Miss, yeah. Could you just, so you're seeking a custodial sentence in 5 years. Do you think that there would be any other programs that you would be seeking that be undertaken or?
I think it's clear from the evidence that the defendant clearly needs some sort of rehabilitation, health-wise and also mental health-wise. And the defense would also acknowledge the defendant is clearly struggling with addiction, although we submit that a custodial sentence is necessary, as we have already discussed, for the protection of the community and to safeguard the mental well-being of the survivor and you still struggle with traumatic flashback. Although a health-related rehabilitation program would also be important. So this how about we go?
Next will be step 11. The victim or survivor makes a statement to the court.
Your Honours, my name is Mira Anorak. I'm a 26-year-old and I identify as a transgender woman. The events that occurred on the 3rd of June 2023 have left a deep and lasting impact on my life. Before that night, I was finally beginning to feel confident in my body and in my life. I was beginning to embrace my identity as a transgender woman. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was in a safe space to express myself that was true to myself. I finally began to feel confident and be open to who my friends and co-workers. But after the events, it has brought me back to the dark space I was in before I began to feel confident. My sense of safety and self-assurance of who I am has been shattered. The physical injuries I suffered were one of the most painful injuries I've ever experienced. The attack left me with fractured ribs and a permanent loss of vision in my right eye. The mirror glass that was lodged in my eye has not only drastically altered my appearance, but taken away my sense of independence. Simple tasks like navigating public spaces or even looking in the mirror now serve as a permanent reminder of what happened. The physical pain was one thing, but the emotional trauma has been truly overwhelming. I struggle with confronting flashbacks of the attack, and often I am now paranoid when walking in public spaces. I always look over my shoulder, and my heart quickens when someone looks at me differently. The memory of being called slurs follows me around and constantly makes me question my worth and my right to exist in this world as a transgender woman. The attack has deeply affected my transition journey. Before, I was proud to carry myself with feminine clothing and makeup. Now that my confidence is gone, I've stopped wearing skirts and dresses altogether because I fear of standing out and putting myself at risk of further violence. Your Honours, I understand that Tammy has her own struggles and I empathise with any challenges she may have faced in her life. However, I feel as though it is extremely unfair that her struggles were projected onto me and inflicted such pain and hatred. The attack was not just an assault on me physically, it was an attack on my dignity, my identity, and my sense of safety. I hope that whatever sentence is imposed will reflect the seriousness of this crime and send a message that such acts of hatred and violence have no place in our society. The long-term effects and pain from the attack will take me years to undo, and I'm very unsure if I can even go back to the self I was before being violently attacked. Thank you, Your Honours, for allowing me to share my story.
Thank you for being so brave and sharing your story. I'm sure it was very I just wanted to chat with you about what your friendship that or position on sentence for the something that reflects this series. Do you have any further to add to that?
I just feel as if that the sentence, like, I don't want it ever happening to anyone else ever again. Like, I'm a transgender woman, I have transgender friends as well, and seeing, like, if my friends were in any of the position that I was put in, I personally, like, I really want the sentence to reflect that so that can never happen to anyone else.
Could you explain this environment?
It's like completely crushed my soul because I was attacked, like, based on what I look like. My confidence was mostly based on, like, my appearance and how I carried myself and how I dressed. I really put a lot of my confidence into that. But now that I was attacked solely on my appearance, I feel as if I can't really continue anymore because if I get attacked again, I've always got that at the back of my mind wherever I go.
Thank you so much.
Step 12. Prosecution witness makes a statement to the court.
Your Honours, my name is Sal Chang, and I have been Mira Anorak's employer at a call centre for the past 3 years. During this time, I have come to know Mira as a reliable, hardworking, and passionate employee. She has always been great on the phone, handling customers with confidence and professionalism, and I have frequently received positive feedback about her work. Mira's dedication and skill made her my top candidate for a promotion before the events of the 3rd of June 2023. Our office is very supportive of the LGBTQ+ community, and Mira's transition, often wearing bright, feminine clothes and expressive makeup, which reflected her vibrant personality. She would regularly receive compliments from her co-workers, and she seemed genuinely happy and comfortable in the workplace. After the incident on the 3rd of June 2023, Mira did not show up for work for several days without notifying anyone. This was extremely out of character for her, as she had always been a reliable worker up until this point. I tried calling her multiple times as I was concerned, but received no response until about a week later when Mira finally called me back and told me that she was in the hospital. She explained that she'd been attacked and felt too ashamed to tell her friends or co-workers about what had happened, to which I reassured her and told her to make as much time as she needed to recover. When Mira returned to work 3 months later, I was shocked by the changes I noticed in her appearance and behavior. She was no longer the confident, enthusiastic employee I had known, but instead began wearing plain colored clothing and no makeup, and her hair had been cut short. She also had an eye patch and visible scarring on her face. These physical changes were quite difficult to see, but the impact on her demeanor was even more profound, as Mira was quieter, less self-assured, and seemed disconnected from her colleagues and her work. Her work performance was noticeably affected as Mira struggled with tasks that she had previously excelled at, particularly those requiring strong customer interaction. Her co-workers offered her assistance, but she declined, which I further believe isolated her and only added to her struggles. For the first time, I started receiving complaints from customers about her being rude or inattentive on calls. which was entirely unlike the Mira I knew before the attack. Unfortunately, due to these considerations, I had to make the difficult decision to give the promotion I had planned for Mira to another employee. Previously, she had been excited about the opportunity, but contrastingly, she did not appear upset by this decision. I believe her lack of interest is another stark contrast to her behavior before the incident. While Mira remains an employee at the call center, her dramatic change in behavior has put her position at risk. Although I continue to be understanding of her circumstances and supportive of her recovery, I also have to consider how her declining performance affects the business. It is clear to me that the attack on Mira has significantly impacted her both personally and professionally. As the confident, vibrant woman I used to know now seemed unsure of herself and her future. I truly hope that Mira finds the support and healing she needs to move forward from this traumatic event. She has always had so much potential, and it is heartbreaking to see how deeply this incident has affected her.
Just confirming, she's still employed by you, but she wasn't able to get it.
Yes, that is correct.
Do you think that all of Mira's change solid and all of them others?
I link it all to the incident. The contrast in her behavior before and after is so striking that I can't put it any other way.
Step 15. Defense lawyer makes a statement to the court.
Defense lawyer, you may proceed. Your Honours, prior to making my submission to assist in sentencing today, I will delve into some of the details of the events, then deliver any statements which are pertinent to establishing the context under which the offending occurred. The defendant in this matter, Tammy Thorne, a 30-year-old orphan woman native to Mandara. Ms. Thorne was tried and convicted of the offence of causing serious injury or harm to another person in aggravating circumstances, pursuant to Article 213(2) of the Criminal Code. I largely concur with the facts as explained by my learned friends from the prosecution. However, I would like to go over some of these details. The nature of the offence was very violent. The defendant was found to have attacked the survivor and has caused her serious and ongoing psychological, professional, and physical harm. On the evening in question, Ms. Thorne stumbled into the train station bathroom, intoxicated after having consumed methamphetamine and excessive amounts of alcohol. After hearing someone who she believed to be a man, the defendant exited her bathroom stall and, upon discovering the survivor, flew into a raged frenzy, attacking her both physically and verbally with blows. Ms. Thorne, after causing this damage, left the survivor there without calling emergency services or anyone else involved. After this point, Ms. Thorne was not forthcoming and did not assist police in their investigation, and she did not show any clear or obvious signs of remorse or regret. There is no denying that Ms. Thorne's actions were a result of hateful, transphobic, and outdated views which were imposed on and taken up by the defendant. Both the defence and Ms. Thorne acknowledge the absolutely reprehensible nature of the crime and understand that the offending did not happen in a vacuum. The seriousness of this offending will have lasting implications for the survivor. The flip side of this being, Your Honour, that Ms. Thorne's antecedents have undoubtedly led to this offence. Ms. Thorne was raised in an environment where a sense of vigilante justice was not only accepted but encouraged, and the use of violence was a clear expectation to achieve the morals and perspectives championed by the orphanage where Ms. Thorne was raised. The orphanage was heavily religious and had very strict conservative beliefs about members of the LGBTQIA+ community and their place in society, or rather their lack thereof. On countless occasions, Ms. Thorne witnessed physical violence towards other children as a result of perceived transgenderism and listened to the use of slurs. Violence at the orphanage did not only centre around LGBTQIA+ matters and beliefs, but extended to aspects of Ms. Thorne's everyday life. From a young age, Ms. Thorne suffered emotional, physical, and sexual abuse despite conforming to the bigoted beliefs of her environment. The abuse to herself and others and the related trauma from the orphanage specifically led to the conservative perspectives being enshrined as not only morally correct but necessary for survival by Ms. Thorne. In this sense, the environment was equal for equal. If children did not comply, they were abused even more themselves. Though the perspectives of Ms. Thorne are uncommonly held by people of Mandara today, in her youth, Ms. Thorne had little other choice but to adopt them herself.
Additionally, Ms. Thorne has had a long history of health problems and complications. She developed substance addictions as young as 12 years old while living at the orphanage. Initially, this was only alcohol, but by age 14, she had begun using methamphetamine. Miss Thorne never knew her parents, though is aware that they both suffered from severe drug addictions before her, indicating a familiar similarity. Miss Thorne's parents' addiction problems resulted thereafter in her having fetal alcohol syndrome, a condition which is known to commonly cause temperament issues, short-temperedness, aggressiveness, and difficulties in self-control and regulation. Miss Thorne has suffered from such symptoms her entire life, often finding it difficult to control their impulses and emotions. These were worsened by her own drug problems, which still causes concern. Miss Thorne's health and addiction problems have impacted her in all aspects of her life, including where her schooling is concerned. Miss Thorne no longer attended school after the age of 15, but her participation in formal schooling was significantly diminished from age 12 onwards, indicating a limited education. This limited education, coupled with her substance, emotional, social, physical, and psychological problems, have impacted Miss Thorne's ability to obtain gainful employment and safe or secure housing. At present, Miss Thorne continues to struggle with addiction and is currently homeless. Your Honour, it is pertinent at this stage to mention Miss Thorne's criminal history. Your Honour, Miss Thorne is no stranger to the law, having been convicted of several other offences, some of which were violent and also hate-based. The first of these offences occurred when she was just a juvenile. Some of these offences led to stints of imprisonment of varying lengths. Ms. Thorne has instructed that during these periods of imprisonment, that her drug addiction and trauma worsened significantly. She was unable to receive the help that she needed for either of these problems while inside, and thus, upon release, was significantly worse off and not rehabilitated or reformed in any way. In my sentencing submissions, I would ask Your Honour to consider that while Miss Thorne is not a juvenile, she is by no means an old offender and therefore possesses more potential than many from this standpoint for rehabilitation. Miss Thorne had a very difficult upbringing and was abused in her early life, has minimal education, has health problems leading to a diminished capacity for emotional and impulse control, and has had lifelong debilitating trauma.
The defence proposes that with rehabilitative services and substance abuse and mental health treatment and not lengthy incarceration periods, that societal change can occur. While acknowledging the aggravators of the case, namely that this is not Miss Thorne's first such offence, that this was a hate-based crime, and that there was serious physical injury involved, the defence firmly believes that the reform of Miss Thorne is possible. The goals of prosecution include specific and general deterrence, rehabilitation, reform, punishment, and protection of the general public. And ultimately, it is the submission of the defence that imposing the maximum penalty of 20 years in this case would not achieve those goals. With Article 420, subsection 2 of the Mandara Criminal Code in mind, the defence admits that a shorter 2-year sentence of imprisonment would be highly appropriate, followed by an extended 8-year parole period. The defence admits that upon release and as a condition of Ms. Thorne's parole, that she be required to attend drug and alcohol counselling services, educational seminars about tolerance in the LGBTQIA+ community, psychological and psychiatric services, and anger management classes. Moreover, the defence admits, if Your Honour is minded, that Ms. Thorne ought to be required to attend weekly check-in with either police or a social worker, where she ought to be subject to drug and alcohol testing. This lengthy parole period and the accompanying strict condition ought to both act as a specific deterrent to Ms. Thorne and reform and rehabilitate her and address the issues which currently afflict her. If Your Honour is not with me on the above commission, the defence admits that Ms. Thorne could also be required to begin alcohol and drug rehabilitation treatment whilst in custody as a precondition before granting of her parole. Unless I can assist Your Honour further, those are my findings. Thank you. So, could you just explain again? So you're seeking 2 years imprisonment, and suggesting that I approach 2 years imprisonment, an academic period of 8 years of parole, with the conclusion that the defendant attends drug and alcohol and psychiatric care from inside the prison. So after conclusion of the sentence, and so after the condition of her parole, that she attend drug and alcohol treatment, psychiatric and psychological services, and also tolerance and education about the LGBTQIA+ community. And then, if Your Honour was minded, it would be a condition of her parole that she also commits some of those things whilst in
You spoke quite a great deal about this very question. Why do you find that such and 2 years? Because the objectives of imprisonment, or at least the objectives of the criminal justice system, are not just to punish, it's to rehabilitate and reform, and a later sentence where we know thus far has been ineffective in achieving those goals isn't going to be enough to rehabilitate and reform her. Whereas 2 years and then followed by an 8-year parole is still capturing the seriousness of the offence, whilst still enabling her to actually rehabilitate herself and reform and become a functioning member of society. Are there any pressures as to her yeah, so in parole, if you're on the line that to make a condition of her release that she attends weekly social work or police where she has done an alcohol testing, if she does not comply with the condition of parole, she will go back. But that's the assurance of drugs. Okay.
Step 17. Defendant or perpetrator makes a statement.
Your Honours. Your Honours, I am Tammy, a 30-year-old woman who has struggled with addiction and instability my whole life. I believe the context of my upbringing, diminished capacity due to fetal alcohol syndrome, and struggles with addiction are extremely important to explain the reasons behind my actions and provide insight to the court as to why I behaved in the manner I did. Please hear my background on this matter. I was abandoned as a baby and grew up in an orphanage that shaped many of my beliefs and behaviours. The orphanage was a religious organisation that was strictly against the LGBTQIA+ community and did not accept transgender people. I remember when I was at the orphanage, one of the younger boys put on some lip gloss he found. The staff slapped him across the face and called him horrible names. They told us it was our duty to stop this kind of behaviour whenever we saw it. These beliefs were reinforced through abuse, and as such, continued to resonate with me as an adult woman. Furthermore, I was abused physically, sexually, and emotionally by older children, exposing me to violence at an extremely young age. I also had fetal alcohol syndrome because my birth parents were drug addicts. This makes it hard for me to control my emotions and impulses, especially when I'm under the influence. My brain doesn't work like other people's. When I feel something, it overwhelms me completely. I get angry and upset very quickly, and once those feelings start, I cannot stop them. Because of the abuse I experienced at the orphanage, violence is often my immediate response. I've always been told that I'm behind others my age. I started drinking at age 12 to cope with everything. By 14, I was using methamphetamines regularly. The substances seemed to help me feel more normal and more in control. And with my condition of fetal alcohol syndrome, substances affect me even more strongly than other people. When I get drunk and high, I lose whatever small ability I have to control my impulses and emotions. I've also spent time in custody, which only worsened my trauma and drug use, as I was surrounded by other offenders and did not have access to appropriate rehabilitation programs. I was also expelled at around 15 and did not return to any type of schooling. I never got to finish my education. Your Honours, on the night I hurt Mira, I was heavily intoxicated with alcohol and methamphetamine. I do not remember what happened that night at the train station, but I know now that I caused terrible injuries to Mira, making her lose vision in one eye, affecting her psychologically, and breaking her ribs. I know my preconceived prejudices and my inability to control my emotions and impulses, made worse by substance use, do not excuse what I did. I'm now beginning to understand the full gravity of my actions. But I need help learning to manage my condition and my impulses without turning to substances. I also need support to overcome the prejudices I was taught and the trauma I experienced. While I'm still struggling with housing and addiction, I'm trying to make small improvements in my life. I now have a job as a cleaner at Burger King. I believe that this demonstrates that I'm willing to become a better person. Please understand my side of the story. Thank you, Your Honours.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask a little bit about your previous time in prison. You saying that you need help, and I can see that really from the action that you've undertaken. But what sort of help did you find got in prison previously? Were you able to access help in prison previously?
I do not believe I was able to access any help in prison, and being surrounded by other offenders, I've just been able to reiterate my trauma, and that's why I continue to offend.
But with you know, that you are acknowledging that you need help, that you'd be able to just in regards to your actions, you still think that you or that you understand practical actions. But I would like to progress.
I think that because of my upbringing in the orphanage and all of these preconceived ideas that were forced upon me as a child, I wasn't able to fully understand, and I just need further help in understanding. Like, I'm not fully there yet, but I think I need rehabilitation programs so that I can fully understand and be a productive member of society.
If you don't fully understand,
I believe that is why initially I probably appeared to not show much remorse and not providing assistance to police. But now that I'm speaking to my support network, I'm slowly learning, but I need more help.
Step 18. Defendant witness makes a statement.
My name is Akira Liu, a childhood friend of Tammy's. I currently work at a sales company and am married with one child. Tammy and I have always been very close and consistently lean on each other for support. We became friends in the orphanage, which is quite a traumatic time for us, as we were conditioned to disapprove of LGBTQ plus community. We were victims to excessively violent, abusive behaviour by our caregivers, with simple gestures such as holding hands with another girl resulting in consequences such as extreme as belting. This abuse extended to all domains, physical, emotional, and sexual by other older kids at the orphanage. I've since recognised that my previous disapproval of LGBTQ plus community was morally wrong and unacceptable. However, this realization was only possible with my increased exposure to the LGBTQ plus community. I have also had the opportunity to form meaningful connections with members of the community, as my brother-in-law is gay and we are very close friends. I largely attribute my ability to develop my mindset and change my prejudicial views to the care and patience of my support system. My ability to change the discriminatory perceptions that we were taught at the orphanage is evidence that Tammy is capable of changing these ideologies as well if she was given the opportunity for rehabilitation as I was. Similar to Tammy, I also engaged in drug and alcohol use as a young adult. However, I have since subscribed to a sober lifestyle. My previous struggles with drug and alcohol give me insight into the destructive impact that addiction has had on Tammy's life. Tammy's illness prevents her from maintaining healthy social relationships and engaging positively with her employment. Despite this, I'm confident that with the right support and treatment, Tammy can be receptive to rehabilitation and overcome her illness of addiction. I acknowledge that Tammy initially seemed unrepentant and unapologetic for her actions towards Mira. However, I truly believe that she is starting to understand the gravity of her behaviour. With my continuous support, Tammy has since been working as a cleaner at Burger King and for the past 2 months has become much more reliable and productive. Removing her from her support system would only exacerbate her drug and alcohol addiction and feed into her social isolation. With continued support, psychological counseling, and addiction treatment. I'm hopeful that she will be able to turn her life around so that she can become a positive, contributing member of society. Psychological counseling would also prevent any further harm to the LGBTQ plus community. Thank you.
Do you still believe that, do you think that it is possible for her to have reformed life?
I believe that she was never given the chance to have the support network and the rehabilitation towards her behaviours towards the LGBTQ plus community. If she was given the chance that I had, then I would believe that she would have rehabilitation and the possibility to change her views.
What specifically that she had?
I feel as though I'm now being able to give her the support that she needed, and I see the changes that she's made, her employment, her changes in behaviour, the way that she feels remorseful about what's happened. I think that she can change.
Step 20. The Chief Judge announces that the judges will leave for a breakout room to deliberate the appropriate sentence for the case.
Thank you, everybody. The judge of now is higher. I would like to thank the prosecution and the defence for their CLE arguments and thank the witness for their education for picking it up and giving evidence in a hearing like this. Thank you very much. We're going to go now and consider the sentence and be back. All right.
Step 22. The judges exit the courtroom and move to a breakout room where they will deliberate on the appropriate sentence for the case. Step 23. Judges re-enter the courtroom after concluding their deliberation on the sentence.
You may be seated.
Step 25. Chief Judge instructs them to be seated and announces the sentence, summarizing the factors considered and the decision reached by the judges.
Thank you, everybody, for waiting while we went and considered the arguments for the sentencing. I would like to say that both the prosecution and the defence did a fantastic job at presenting compelling arguments for sentencing. However, it is at the judge's discretion, and we have all used our discretion today to consider a sentence that is outside the nature of the sentences that both the prosecution and the defence were putting forward. We've reviewed the crime. We've also reviewed the aggravating and mitigating circumstances. We've reviewed the criminal history of the defendant and the perpetrator, and we considered the statements both of counsel. We've read the statements of the victim survivor and the defendant and the perpetrator. And accordingly, we hereby sentence the defendant to a 5. Could the defendant please come and stand here?
Step 26. Chief Judge states the reason for the sentence so that the defendant or perpetrator and the victim or survivor understand why the judges have ruled in this way. The association judges may also provide their reasoning or perspective on the sentence.
In sentencing you today, I want to make it very clear that the judges and I looked very closely at all of the facts in this matter. It was very compelling to hear from you about your time in prison and the time that you had spent in the orphanage growing up. However, it is unacceptable in this society to hold such views. Your friend and witness today doesn't hold such views, and she doesn't go and act on any of those views, but she grew up in a very similar situation to you. And I think it's important to remember that just because somebody tells you something is right, that's not always the case.
And so we've taken into account that background that you have, and I understand your sought solace from drugs and alcohol, like many people do in these situations, and that this fetal alcohol syndrome has affected you, it caused you to have lapses in judgment, and I've taken all of those factors into consideration. However, a woman has lost sight in one of her eyes because of what you did to her, and that is a horrible thing that she will have to live with for the rest of her life. And not only has she lost sight, she has also lost parts of herself. We heard from the victim's testimony and from the witness to in the prosecution's team that she's become unrecognizable, and that is linked, if not solely, to what you have done to her. She was terrified. She was assaulted in a bathroom when she should have just been able to go to the toilet like any other person, and it is completely and utterly unacceptable conduct for anyone in this society to engage in. And it is important to know that if you engage in any such conduct again, I may not be so lenient with you. However, on this occasion, the Chief Justice and the bench have decided to impose on you a suspended sentence for 5 years on the condition that you complete drug and alcohol courses, which the defence has kindly provided information about. So I'll get the defence to make sure that all of those courses are sent to you. Thank you for that. We will also be requesting that you do drug and alcohol testing and that you go through an anger management program. I think also it is really important that you address your own history. And I think that we'll be imposing some counselling on you as well to go and sort out what's happened in your life and make sense of it so that you can start moving forward. Additionally, whilst we acknowledge that you are now working at Hungry Jack's, and I'm sure you're not making a huge amount of money, and it's incredibly fantastic to know that you've been able to get a job, but we think it's really important that you make a donation to an LGBTQI plus organisation or a trans-specific organisation of the victim's choice, and the victim can let my clerk know what organisation that might be, and we can discuss, how much that donation will be when you can provide me with some information around how much you're actually earning. But a small donation in the sense of it being significant, that you would be doing that. If you fail to breach any of these things, then your sentence will become not suspended anymore and you will be back in prison. And as you yourself have said, you did not like it there, you didn't get the support that you needed there. So I encourage you deeply to think about this as a last chance, to think about the fact that you have injured somebody so seriously she cannot see and you've impacted her emotional damage, and then you go away with these thoughts, you complete these programs, and hopefully I haven't made a mistake in not sending you to jail today. So, yes. Thank you.